Welcome to This Week in True Crime. This week, I will be talking about some of the recent cases of interest, including the discovery of a missing girl's remains in Chula Vista, California, a painful execution in Arkansas, and some serial killer news, including one bit of news from Arizona that is extremely shocking. In January of 2017, a man walking his dog in Otay Valley Regional Park in Chula Vista discovered human remains. DNA was sent to the sheriff's lab and an autopsy was conducted. On Monday, April 24, 2017, the police announced that the body was that of 16-year-old Kimberly Arteaga. 3 years earlier, Kimberly had disappeared from Lemon Grove, near San Diego, California. The autopsy also discovered that she had been murdered and that she was killed shortly after the time of her disappearance. One of her friends at the time, Aaron Bonilla, has stated that he believes the killer was Kimberly's boyfriend. The San Diego County Sheriff's Department said that the boyfriend is a person of interest in the case. I'll be keeping a watch on this one and will be making any updates through aberrantnation.com as well as these videos. Have you heard the name James Dale Ritchie? If you don't live in Anchorage, Alaska, then the answer is probably no unless you are heavily interested in true crime. Ritchie was in a shootout with the police on November 12, 2016. He shot and wounded one officer before being killed himself. When the authorities began to look closer at Ritchie and ran a ballistics test on the weapon he used to shoot at the police, they found that the weapon had also been used to murder a man named Travion Kendall Thompson. On April 26, police in Anchorage announced that Ritchie was indeed a serial killer. They tied Ritchie and the weapon, a Colt Python revolver, to 4 more deaths leading up to his fatal encounter with the police. On July 3, 2016, Ritchie murdered Brianna Foisey and Jason Netter. On August 28, 2016, he murdered Bree DeHusson and Kevin Turner. It is unknown if there were any other murders, as nothing else has been tied to Ritchie as of yet. On Wednesday, April 26, 2017, police in Polk County, Arkansas arrested Brian Bliss Travis on drug charges. However, it seems there are things far darker than drugs in Travis's recent past. Travis was the live-in boyfriend of a woman named Bethany Jo Wester. She, along with her 2 children, went missing a week before Travis's arrest. Her body was found on April 25th in a creek located near Cove, Arkansas. Wester's 2-year-old daughter, Aislinn, was found the same day not far from her mother's body. On Thursday, April 27th, the body of Wester's uncle, Stephen Payne, was found in his home in Hatfield. On Sunday, April 30th, Travis led police to the body of Wester's second child, a 9-year-old boy named Riley. He was located in a wooded area. Polk County Sheriff Scott Walker says he believes capital murder charges are going to accompany Travis's drug charges. How much comfort and coddling should someone get when they are being put to death for multiple murders? Should you feel sorry when murderers suffer? Kenneth Williams was put to death on Thursday, April 27th, and there are some people up in arms about it, stating that the ordeal was cruel and that Williams suffered. Scott Braden, the Arkansas federal public defender, said, "Media witnesses say that Mr. Williams lurched forward as many as 20 times, was observed coughing, convulsing, lurching, jerking with sound, and more during the execution, including making sounds that were audible in adjacent rooms, even after his microphone was turned off. None of this should have happened." Now, here's what I think about this. None of that would have happened if Kenneth Williams had not been a heartless and cold-blooded murderer. He put himself into the death chamber with his series of murders. Here's a quick rundown of what he did. In 1998, when Williams was 19 years old, he kidnapped Dominique Hurd. She was a student at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. He also kidnapped her friend at the same time. He took them to ATMs to get money, and then he shot both of them before taking off in a stolen car. Dominique died from her injuries. Her friend survived. While he was in prison for this crime, he escaped. It was October of 1999 when he fled from jail, broke into a home several miles away, and killed a man named Cecil Boren. Williams dragged Cecil outside of the house and shot him 6 times. He stole Boren's vehicle, along with weapons, and during a high-speed chase in Missouri, he hit a vehicle, killing Michael Greenwood, the driver. Later, Williams would confess to having killed another person, Jarrell Jenkins, the same day he killed Dominique Hurd. Given this man's crimes, how much sympathy are people expected to feel when they learn he suffered at the time of his death? In my opinion, none. What would you do if you found out that a serial killer had been released into your community? This doesn't sound like it can be remotely possible in the real world, does it? Well, if you're a resident of Tucson, Arizona, not only is it possible, it's a fact. You have been living with a released serial killer in your midst for more than a year now. To understand how this could happen, we first have to take a trip back to 1967. The town of Sierra Vista was quite small at the time, and the population was only around 5,000 people. It was, according to what most people thought, a very safe place to live. That feeling of safety was forever shattered when a 7-year-old girl named Cindy Cleland disappeared on April 30th of 1967. A few days later, the poor little girl's naked and mutilated body was discovered in the desert within the bounds of nearby Fort Huachaca. Local authorities, as well as the FBI and investigators in the Army, worked toward finding Cindy's killer. About a week after the discovery of the body, the police received a handwritten letter. It was from someone who dubbed himself the Phantom. In the mind of the killer, the letter likely served several purposes. It worked to taunt the police. He was able to give himself a name, no matter how silly it might sound. And it was also meant, I believe, to deflect from who he really was. In the letter, he mentions that he has gray hair and that he's an old man. However, that wasn't quite who the Phantom really was. The letter also included the name of the street on which he claimed his next victim lived, as well as her age. The police were able to determine the identity of the girl in the letter, and they provided around-the-clock protection. Meanwhile, the entire community was living in fear. Sierra Vista's police chief at the time, C. Reed Vance, believed that a teenage boy named William Huff was somehow involved in the disappearance. The teen had been in trouble with the law before. However, there was no proof that he was involved at the time. It was less than a month later, on June 22nd, that another child went missing. Her name was Janelle Haynes, and she's pictured here. She was 6 years old at the time of her disappearance. She lived on the military base with her family, and the last time she was seen, according to her brother, was when she was talking with a tall, slender teenage boy of African American descent. This was around 11 a.m. 2 hours later, Chief Vance was driving onto the base for a meeting and noticed William Huff leaving the post on foot. The investigators found Janelle's body later that day. Her murder was strikingly similar to that of Cindy a month before. The description from Janelle's brother, along with the chief seeing the teen walk off the base, led them to William Huff. A handwriting sample matched the letter the Phantom had sent the police as well. This was certainly not the first time the 16-year-old had been in trouble with the police. He had also killed cats, including cats on the base. He stole bicycles and he broke into his neighbor's home. The neighbor told the police that Huff had molested their daughter. Huff was found guilty and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for one murder and 40 to life for another. You imagine they would have just locked him up and thrown away the key. They didn't though, and today he's out. He didn't escape, they let him out. Huff was first eligible for parole in 2008. According to reports, he would always blame drugs or alcohol for his problems. He would never accept responsibility. It was not until December 2nd, 2015 that the Clemency Board granted Huff release on home arrest. The board willingly and knowingly released a person who is, by all accounts, a sexual sadist and pedophile, a serial killer. Board members felt that since Huff had a clean record in prison and that the crime was committed 50 years ago, he would not be a risk. Since Huff has been out of prison for more than a year and has not committed another crime, the board believes this is proof they are right. Of course, a dog that bites doesn't have to bite every day to be dangerous. With these types of predators, there is always a severe danger of them hurting somebody else. Most people still have no idea that Huff is out and living among them right now. The murderer is supposedly wearing a GPS device and needs to have permission to leave the home. However, he has been out cruising the streets on his bicycle. He was approached recently by Gilbert Zermano, an investigative producer and photojournalist in Arizona. Huff was asked if he understood why people were nervous about him being out. Huff responded by saying they were nervous about my case and what happened to me. This seems to be a very telling statement about Huff's mind. He still isn't taking responsibility for his crimes. It does not appear he feels he's done anything wrong. Oh, and there are no provisions barring Huff from having contact with children. In fact, according to what the photojournalist saw, children were seen playing in front of the home where Huff now lives. Only fools bring proven monsters into their own neighborhoods, and it appears that's just what the Clemency Board has done to Tucson. Hopefully, Huff will be watched carefully enough that nothing else happens. If something were to happen, the blood would be on the hands of Huff as well as the Clemency Board members that allowed Huff out. That is going to wrap it up for this week in true crime. Once again, I know there are tons of other cases out there that I didn't cover, but there's only so much one person can do. If you are interested in true crime, make sure you visit my website, aberrantnation.com. I try to post an article just about every single day. You can also follow me on Facebook and Twitter, and I will leave links below. Until next week.